Hey everyone, this is Stephanie O'Brien, founder of Coach Client Connection. Today I'm joined by Jesper Sandell, and he is an expert in the communication in a way that helps people to make the decisions that you want them to buy from you, to take the next step from you. So while he does specialize in persuasion and communication, he's coming at it from an uncommon angle. Neuroscience combined with storytelling, because as you probably know, storytelling is one of the best ways to really get people engaged. The human brain is designed to latch onto stories, to process them more easily, to be emotionally persuaded by them. So it's a really powerful form of sales. And now they're going to combine it with neuroscience to make it even more effective. This can be applied to your offer, your landing pages, your sales pages, anywhere where you want to encourage your clients to take the next step. So thank you very much for joining us, Jesper.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. So you mentioned in an earlier call with me that you help people to tap into how their clients make their decisions. So I'd love to hear a bit more about that. How do you help people to understand and tap into the human decision-making process?
Okay, so first, let me go here first.
Okay.
The common assumption is that we come across information or content and that we rationally interact with it. And based on that rationale, are we going to keep interacting with it or are we going to move on to something else? Where in reality is most of our attention happens automatically. So constantly there are subconscious filters running in the background, kind of screening out things that aren't important and focuses on things that are very important to you specifically.
Mhm.
So that when you put a piece of content in front of somebody, what they're going to do is first they're going to apply like a filter. Is this important to me? Like, is this really related to my survival? Is this going to help me make money? Is this really dangerous? Do I need to avoid it? Second, if it's none of those things, is this similar to something that I already know? I can just apply an automatic response to it. And if I can, I will. And if is it possible at all to just simply ignore it? Because one of the things with the brain is that because it's so heavy to use the rational part of the brain, we try to use it as little as possible. So most people, what happens is they put a piece of content, whether there's a sales page or a social media post or a landing page, articles, white papers, you name it, they fill it with information that the perfect end user filters out immediately.
Mhm.
So you don't give them a chance to realize, oh, shoot, this is something that's really for me. Instead, their automatic filter goes, I don't really understand this. Let me just focus on something else. Or they just skim it and they don't really take it in. They don't engage with it. They don't really engage with the actual information. They just, okay, I read it. Let's move on to the next task. Does that make
Look,
sense?
yeah, it's like reading the terms and conditions. Okay, here's the same paragraph they've seen 50,000 times. Here's the warning not to reverse engineer the video game, which it wouldn't have even occurred to me to do if you hadn't mentioned it, and I still don't know how to do now.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a few people say we're living in the attention age, and of course, with people's brains so full of all this information being thrown at them,
Yeah.
attention is hard to get. So, what tips can you give for just immediately grabbing people's attention so that even if they're in that energy conservation mode, they immediately go, "Oh, this deserves some of my energy."
Okay. So, what I would like to say is if you think of communication not as information, not information at all, rather information or communication that hits people and starts having them engage with it, it actually creates pictures in their minds. So, like abstractions like, get more confidence or those general terms that we don't understand, that just goes out the window. However, if you can simplify the language so that it instantly creates a vision for people. So take your landing page, for example. The sentences or the overall message, can you see that with a video camera? Is it when you read the text, can you actually see if you had a video camera there, would you be able to see, would you be able to film it and have an actual event going on?
I love
If
that
you,
filter. Like so many people say, tell it, they paint a picture, say it in terms of like a picture, but that criteria of could a camera catch it? I think that makes it
yeah.
really clear and specific in a way that can't be misunderstood.
Yeah, because so here's the reason why that's so important is because if you simplify the brain, we have two different parts of the brain. That's a very simplified way of looking at it. But we have a subconscious brain or a primal brain that handles things automatically for us. By the way, that's the ratio between the subconscious and the conscious brain is something like the conscious brain can handle like 40, 50 bits of data per second. The subconscious handles like 11 million bits per second.
Wow.
So it's not like a slightly different, it's like astronomically different. Like I usually to create a vision in your viewer's head now, I usually illustrate this concept before I even look at the numbers. I have an elephant. On top of the elephant, I have a tiny little mouse with a leash around like the noose or the the head of the elephant. And I said, this is the actual ratio, except the mouse should be smaller, but I can't make it smaller because then we wouldn't be able to see it. This is how much more dominant our subconscious automatic filters are. So realize as you create your content, if people can see it with a camera, they can see that vision in their heads, which in terms means they can have an emotional response to it.
Yeah, it's like the difference between saying you'll lose weight versus you'll fit in your favorite skinny jeans again.
Yeah, exactly. Like say, well, lose weight or look in the mirror and then put on the jeans that you had like 20 years ago when you married your husband and you felt as, the sexiest ever. You walk into a room and everybody turns their heads. Would you like to get into shape like that? And most people are going to say, hell yes, yes, I'd love to, So it's really stories, creating stories and understanding how to create stories. Because here's the thing. Just creating a story doesn't mean the story is going to do anything because Hollywood is filled with discarded scripts that don't do anything. So you need to know what makes a story because it's not just the hero's journey. It's actually what are the elements of his story that makes it successful, if
And
that
what
makes
makes it
sense.
relevant to your specific audience.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
speaking of which, could you give some tips for, not just, countless stories, like how do people notice the stories in their lives or develop the stories in their lives that are relevant to their audience? How do they come up with them? Is there a litmus test they can use to determine whether it's relevant and will make them more likely to get sales?
So, so I think the stories you want to choose, you have to choose them based on who is your ideal target audience. Because you can't tell any story. You need to find the kind of stories that the reason why trust is so important in persuasion and communication is because until people realize you understand their situation, they don't care how much you know because we are really self-centered. It's just this just biology. We are self-centered. So before people listen to you, you need to find a story in your life where your life is somehow adjacent to their lives or something that they can relate to. I was in your shoes like this once and I got to the other side. Something that they can relate to. So it's really not about how you were really good at something or how you succeeded. It's like I was here once and then I realized something that made all the difference, which took me here. I know you're here now, but I know you want to get here. And I know this seems impossible for you to get here now. However, I'm going to show you exactly how I did it.
I like that. And that relatability is important for anybody
Mm,
watching this who is reluctant to share your problems, your struggles, your vulnerabilities. I once
mm,
read a post from this person who wanted to sell me, I think it was marketing, and going on about how they started out and they were just immediately successful in their business, never struggled, just immediately hit gold, and everybody wanted to buy from them. I didn't have that, and I can't quite relate to it. And it sounds like you won't be able to relate to a person who didn't just immediately have lightning in a bottle. So it's like just having a success story isn't enough. You need to show the clients or the potential clients you've been where they are, you understand their current situation, and you know the roadmap from where they are to where they need to be.
yeah. Yeah,
So,
yeah, that's absolutely true. Yeah.
so if somebody has a lot of different stories, or if they're struggling to come up with one story, what advice would you give them for those two scenarios?
Well, Well, it really depends from case to case. But what I would like to get to is like the heart of a story. Is a story is never a story before there's tension. You never see a successful movie about somebody who wakes up in the morning and he doesn't have cereal and he realizes he's out of cereal. He goes across the street to the supermarket, comes back with a box of cereal and he has breakfast. There's never a story about that. The story is always going to be he wakes up in the morning. I'm making this up, by the way. He wakes up in the morning and he realizes his alarm clock was turned off and he didn't remember turning it off. And then he sees a shadow in the corner and it looks like a gun. And, that's just the beginning of the story. So it's always about some sort of a tension. And there's a really good format. This is a really good tip. The South Park guys, and that's where I heard it first. Trey Parker and I forgot his other name is you never tell events as they unfolded. You never say things like, okay, this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, because then it's so boring. Instead, we start with this happened, and this is the key. But this happened, and because this happened as well, and then that happened because of that. But then this thing also happened. So think of everything as a but. This happened, but this happened, and therefore this happened. So everything you do, even in your writing, that's why if you look at like TV scripts or series, you'll find that there's this, but this happened, and then this happened, but this happened all the time. We just don't realize it. Like the hero never has a good relationship with his wife. There's always like a divorce, or there's a drinking problem, or he works too much, or he's not there for his kids enough. There's always tension in every step of the way. It's not like Humpty Dumpty, like this is really great, but we have this problem. There are problems everywhere. And that's how you create your stories. When you write a white paper, for example, it's a series of, but this happened, so then this happened as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And of course, that tension, I imagine, needs to, as much as possible, reflect the tension that the reader is experiencing.
Oh yeah, of course. Mm. And one of the reasons why it's so important that they can emphasize with you is the way we perceive the world is really interesting, is that we have mirror neurons. So that when you see a story or somebody else, they could be on a sales call, for example, but when you see somebody experience something, your mirror neurons mirror the exact experience, which means you have the same bodily experience. Maybe not the magnitude is the same, but if there's tension, if there's somebody scary, you are experiencing that. Your heartbeat goes up. You start sweating. You're experiencing exactly what the hero is experiencing or what your possible prospect or client is experiencing. So, which means when you do this correctly, they're having this experience with you as you explain what it was like before you succeeded. And then they take you on it's almost like you're tethered together with emotions and mirror neurons. So you're actually taking that rise from the beginning to the success together when you do it well, if that makes sense. It's kind of crazy, but that's how it works.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense. So, what are some of the common mistakes you see when people, like, let's say they're implementing most of this, they think they're
Hmm.
doing it all right, but it's still just not converting? What are have you noticed situations like that and noticed some common threads in why that happens?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say number one is abstractions. From the day you started school, if you went further, if you got a nice job, you worked in corporate, you're so used to jargon, you're so used to abstraction and complex language, and we tune that out immediately. In fact, so biologically, when you come across something that's complex and complicated, you don't understand it. In real life, if you see something rattling, you're in the forest, what do you do when you don't understand it?
You avoid it.
You avoid it. And same thing with when we see like a really distraught, really poorly designed web page, for example, we just, I don't want to do that. We're biologically conditioned to do that. So simplicity and clarity is so vital. So the number one problem people have is really complexity. not making it clear. That's the number one. Number two, I want to say this. In the age of content creation, I don't think people realize that we are pattern making, meaning making machines. It's really easy to create content. However, if somebody sees your content continuously over and over again, that could be a really good thing. However, if your content comes from GPT or just generic content, time and time and time again, guess what we do? We label that as, okay, so remember this because I want to save energy. Remember to not pay attention to this person's content because it's always generic. So next time we just scroll by it. So content isn't king at all. Content now these days, it's so easy to make content. You got to make a decision. Like when you put out a post, for example, you got to ask yourself, is this going to lead closer to my offer or farther from my offer? And do I know how it's going to lead them closer? It's really important that you actually take that stance first and understand what it is that you're trying to do with your post. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I get so many friend requests, mostly from people who just want to sell me something, and some of them is like it's inspirational quote after inspirational quote. It's them talking about how they got their new car, and it's like, okay, yeah, but this is so scattered and so unclear. It feels like you don't know what you're doing. I don't know where you're trying to lead me with all this,
Yeah.
except probably into your downline. Except that you're being so evasive about it that it makes me wary.
No, you're right. You're right. I mean, authority isn't transferred. So if you use somebody else's quote, that authority goes to whoever came out with the quote. It doesn't lead them anywhere closer to their content. Um, it is also tough because people get stuck thinking they have to create content, create, and it's kind of frowned upon. Like if you stop, if you're a quitter, that's frowned upon as something really bad. But I would argue stopping, quitting something that isn't working, and then focusing on, okay, so this didn't work. Why didn't it work? Let me come up with a different strategy. I think it's better to quit and then rethink your strategy than just keep going. But because so that's why it's not really good advice when people say, you know, never give up, just keep going, it will come, just keep pushing. This is bad advice,
Yeah, don't give up on the goal, but do give up on a bad
yeah,
strategy. If your canoe has run aground, you don't just keep paddling, you put the canoe back in the river.
right? Yeah, no, it's absolutely, yeah, no, I 100% agree.
So, how did you get into all of this? I imagine you probably got your own story to tell about how you got into this field.
So back, I'm in Japan now. So back in the States, I I was running for many years. I was running like a production company, service-based production company. I was making websites for people. I was making like a commercial videos, we did proposals, all kinds of stuff, like a production company. But when my second kid it was 8 months, we left everything behind, including my company, and I moved to Japan. So I didn't quite know exactly what to do, and I didn't speak Japanese, so I couldn't go and work here. So what I did is that I went after a field I wanted to do for many years. I just didn't have a chance. I was too busy. Um, and I went in with the intention of getting really good at it, and I started to understand marketing better back then. I could sell, because I'd sold from referrals or my services for many years, but I wanted to start online. So I intentionally focused on one area and I became really good at one specific thing in a very specific niche or niche. And then I had to sell that thing, and it was tough at first because I didn't know how to make sales pages back then. I hadn't studied all the sales psychology. I could sell person to person. Um, So I went kind of nuts and I read all the psychology I could, all the neuroscience on why people buy. By the way, the best advice I can give about copywriting, don't read books about copywriting, read copy. I studied sales letter after sales letter after sales letter. It's got to be in the thousands at this point. And what you realize, you would think that from like 1920 to 2010, you'd see lots of different variations of what they do. But what you find is that you use exactly the same things in 1927 by Robert Collier or 1950 by Carbo or Dan Kennedy. Um, you find the same things. The same elements are used again and again and again. And now when you compare that with the psychology and the neuroscience, you start realizing, oh, that's why it works, because we work in very predictable ways. Um, so that helped, and I started selling more and more. Um, and that kind of led me into this different kind of path where I teach others how to do this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it is quite a leap going from here I've got this company to I'm in a country that I don't even speak the language and can't really work here. So, kudos to you for that courage.
Well,
And
well, well, thank you. You know what I think it speaks to, though, and I think it gives should give hope to anybody in that the neuroplasticity of the brain is just phenomenal. Like we think we're set in, like I have this skill set, I can never move forward. No, you can be 50, you can be 60, you can still learn new skills. So you're never stuck. So if you understand that you can always evolve, go to the next step, learn new skills, and in my opinion, if you couple that with understanding how communication works, you always have the ability to move on to something that you want to do, which in terms gives you freedom because you're not stuck. You're not tethered to the past. The sunk cost fallacy is real. You can just cut those ties and build skills. I don't mean like become rich overnight, but you can build skills that you can then capitalize on and build any business. Um, so there's hope for everybody, for anybody.
yeah, and I remember like being in a partnership that wasn't a great fit for years, and I kind of knew it wasn't a good fit, but I'd sunk so much into it. Sunk cost fallacy was very much a thing. But then I, finally did cut ties, and it
Yeah.
was a huge relief to finally no longer have this big obligation to something that just wasn't a good fit for me anymore. I'd spent too much time trying to paddle the canoe up that bank. It was trying to put the canoe back in the river.
Yeah, makes sense.
So if somebody watching this is tired of paddling their canoe up the bank for spending too many hours creating the wrong content and they want to start creating better content, converting better, but they feel like they still need some help to do it right, what's their next step to get additional help?
So no, so I have a guide that I think is helpful for people in start seeing communication in a different light. And in the guide, I break down specifically three different problems and things that people can do to really change up how they do their communication and how they see their communication. So it's like because you got to understand why you do things so that you can do them. So I do have, I call them three persuasion secrets, and they're all based on neuroscience and in how we actually perceive the world and how we actually make decisions. So it's free. I think it's like 33 pages, but it's got pictures and stuff. It's an easy read. So absolutely free. So I would recommend you grab that one.
Awesome. And of course, anyone watching this, the link will be in the show notes, whether you're watching on my blog, on my YouTube channel, on my social media, the link will be there. So what are these, just so that people can tell whether this is something that they need, what are the three main problems that you solve in this so people can see if they have these problems?
So number one is that we spoke about this before is are you using abstractions or are you actually communicating in a way that's easy for us to understand? Like that's number one. And how do you actually do that? Not just I don't just tell you that this is what you got to do. Like, how do you actually do that? What are the means? What are the changes you need to make to your communication?
Yeah, that
right?
those specifics are so important. I've tried to get some people to explain what exactly they do. It's like pulling teeth. Yes, I
Yeah.
do this. Yes, but how does that tie into a result? Well, I do that. That's the process. So
Yes.
I love that you're adding these specifics so people can actually tell the difference because
Yep.
so many times we think we're being specific and we're really not.
No, we're really not. Bring back that video camera. It's more than just a video camera, but bring the video camera. Are you actually telling a story that if people were there, would they understand what that person is doing? Because if you add on top of that, whenever somebody is experiencing something, they can see it. It's never a robot, it's a person who you can start seeing like, oh, they have certain thoughts in their mind. They're thinking something and they're experiencing something which is leading to some sort of an emotion. And because of the mirror neurons, we start being able to understand what they're going through. And when you're able to actually give people a vision of what a more successful future will look like, what they do in that moment, because the subconscious doesn't understand the difference between past and present, it only understands now. So as you're giving them a vision of what a potential great future could look like, they're experiencing that in real time, which means also you're creating a memory anchor that they can remember so that they have an actual goal to go towards. It's not abstract anymore. It's like gain confidence. You're actually telling them, here's the potential future. They're experiencing it. And they get to choose, do you want to pursue this or do you want to stay stuck where you are? That's what you're doing in your communication. Like, here is the very possible future for you. You have the exact steps to take. Would you like to go there or would you prefer to be stuck here? If
Yeah,
that
it
makes
sounds
sense.
like you, yeah, so it sounds like you kind of give them the specifics of how to communicate that in a way that's really persuasive and inspires people to take action.
Yeah, no,
Nice.
absolutely. And the other thing I want to emphasize here is that when people think about marketing, creating content isn't marketing. Marketing to a very large degree is how can I say the things that are really important to my ideal clients so that they remember me for it. It's really an exercise in them not forgetting you. So what you really want to do is you want to be known kind of for a problem that you solve for people. And you want to repeat that very, very, very often because you want them to subconsciously make the connection between their problem and the person who can solve it. So marketing is take a step back and understand what is it that I want people to ultimately do, and then how do I do that? And how do I show up every time so that every time I show up, I move them closer to my offer. That's what my marketing is not to just throw content out there. I'm not throwing spaghetti at the wall. I'm showing up there and I'm giving people a reason to go to my offer, which essentially is you're giving them hope because you can solve their problem. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. So we're just about out of time here, so I'm going to wrap it up. For everyone watching, once again, if you are really tired of rowing your canoe up the bank, just spending hours and hours upon making content that just does not convert, if you're tired of feeling like you're doing everything right and it's still just
Mhm.
not working, if you want to start, telling your story in a way that actually gets people to take action, to start working with you, to see that you are the solution to the problems they've been struggling with, be sure to get the gift that Jesper is offering in the link that's going to be with the show. So thank you again for joining us, Jesper.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And to everyone watching this, I hope you all create an amazing day.